Good morning, I'm Senior Airman Audrey Moore. I work over at the 2nd FSS. Like Senior Master Sergeant Alexander said, I've been at Barksdale for a little over 2 years now. This is my second base. My story today kind of goes hand in hand with training that we've had in the past on sexual assault. We know all the stories, the scenarios. He was weak, or she shouldn't have worn that. And you don't really hear much more than those scenarios. My story is not one of those scenarios. It all started back when I was very young. When I was about 5 years old, my mom got married to a man, his name was Ben, and he was in the Coast Guard. He was the only dad figure I really had in my life at that point. So I looked up to him a lot. I trusted him. I mean, you're young, you don't really know much more than that. So life was good. We moved. We normally stayed in the New England area. I'm originally from Maine. And it was about a year after my sister was born, the year 99, we decided that we were going to go to his parents' house, my grandparents' house, for Christmas. My mom wasn't able to go. So it was just him, myself, and my sister. I don't know your backgrounds, but in my background, my house, the big thing was if a parent was missing, to sleep in the big bed was a big deal for us, just because, it's a big bed. So I asked him if I could sleep on my mom's side of the bed, and he said that was fine, no problem. Without getting into too much detail, that night that we arrived at my grandparents' house, I woke up and some of my clothes were not where they should have been. And I confronted him about it, and he brushed it off, said, you did it in your sleep, or you were overheating, so I was trying to help you out. And it didn't really settle well with me, but I let it go because we still had a leg of the trip going on, and my mom wasn't there for me to talk to her. Once I got home, I brought it up to my mom, and she immediately got into action. She called the Department of Health and Human Services in Maine. They came and interviewed, and they took him out of the house. The process went on for 6 months, roughly, where he was allowed to come back into the house, but he had to have somebody with him, supervising him, always questioning, why'd you hug your child? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? It was so uncomfortable, and the system ended up failing us ultimately because they just kind of pushed our case under the rug and didn't do anything about it. And it was really unfortunate, and we were all getting agitated. People were asking questions. Why isn't Ben in the house anymore? So eventually we said, screw it, bring him back in the house. You guys aren't doing what you need to do, and we want our dad back. So he was allowed back into the house, and everything kind of went back to normal, and it was great. A few years down the line, I had just turned 12. We're living in a different location, and my mom decided that she was going to go out with all of her girlfriends and have like a mom's night, and all the dads got together at my next door neighbor's house with all of the kids to watch. At some point during the night, the dads were getting a little rowdy because they were drinking, had a couple beers, whatever, and the kids were getting tired. So I brought them back to my house. Being the oldest child, I was like the big babysitter. So we went back over to my house, and I popped in a movie, the kids started falling asleep, and I ended up falling asleep on the couch. Eventually, Ben came home and told me to go up to bed. So I did. All the kids were gone. My sister was in her room asleep. So I went upstairs, got into my pajamas, and went to bed. I woke up in the middle of the night to him touching me. Luckily, it was all over the clothes, but it's still traumatizing. He would grope me in places that I won't tell. And I'm awake, but I couldn't move. I was so scared just laying there. And this was a man that I called dad, that I trusted, and he's doing something dads should not be doing to their child. And I freaked out, but I couldn't move. So I just laid there. because I naturally toss and turn in my sleep, I decided, okay, I'm just gonna roll over a little bit further away from him and maybe he'll go away. Unfortunately, it didn't stop him. He ended up going to the end of my bed. He ripped all the sheets out and proceeded to do what he was doing. And again, I couldn't move. Later on in the night, my mom finally came home from her girls' night, and I heard her talking downstairs because I was kind of going in and out of sleep. So I went downstairs and I said, "Mom, could you please come tuck me in?" And she said, "No, you're 12 years old, go tuck yourself in." Can't blame her. She didn't think anything was wrong because I didn't let her know anything was wrong. So I went back up to bed and I went to sleep. The next morning, I went downstairs, my usual routine, and got my Pop-Tart, sat on the couch, and I just waited. Didn't even turn on the TV, and I am big on TV. I just sat and I waited until my mom woke up. And she finally came in the living room, and I said, "Mom, I really need to talk to you." She said, "What's going on?" So I told her what had happened the night before, and she looked at me and she said, "Get your stuff, go in your room, and shut your door. Do not come out until I say so." I said, "Okay, no problem." So I went upstairs and I didn't shut my door all the way because I'm nosy. My mom went into her bedroom where Ben was sleeping. She started yelling at him and she was hitting him, and she threw clothes at him, like a shirt or whatever, to get him out of the house. She walked him to the door and she slammed the door so hard the entire house shook. I will never forget that. And I ran over to her room to look out the window, showing the front of the street, and I watched him walk away, and I started crying. I don't know why. I guess it was just because it was so upsetting. My mom immediately started making phone calls. It was luckily the middle of the summer, so we weren't going to miss any school, and we went and stayed at one of my aunt's house for about a month. We didn't call the system, the Department of Health and Human Services, this time just because of how much they failed us the first time this came about. So we just kind of went about our way. Right about the time that school started, we finally found a place that we were going to live permanently. My aunt and my uncle rented out a house for us, so we picked up and left. And I had to start a whole new school system, nothing new, Coast Guard brat, got used to it. But this was different. This was the ultimate move. We're not moving anymore. And I went to a small town where it's a whole bunch of kids that have known each other since diapers, and that makes it a little bit harder. But my mom made a deal with Ben that, okay, we'll keep this quiet as long as you do what I say. You're gonna work on my terms. And he said, okay, that's fine, because by then he was, I believe, in E6 in the Coast Guard. So, you know, his career was on the line and he needed to pay child support. If he went to jail, there's no income, which is unfortunate, but that's how we worked it, and I was fine with it. I didn't have to see him. It was all good to go. Later on down the line, I have joined the Air Force. I have been in for about a year, almost 2 years. And his mother had passed away, so I had to see him. I'd seen him a few times before that, but we had to go home to the funeral and everything, and he started being stupid, is the best way I can phrase it. He started ignoring my sister, who is his actual child, his legitimate child. He wasn't sending the child support anymore, and I got so furious with him because he made this deal with my mom so we could basically save him and he wouldn't have to go to jail. And it was going down the toilet. So at my first base in DC, I brought it up to SARC and I told them everything, and it went from there. He's now in jail, has been for about 2 years. He had to go through the Article 32 hearing and a court-martial, and I had to be there for all of that, unfortunately. But he is now serving his time, which makes me very happy. And makes it a little bit harder on my family, but it really needed to happen. This man completely ruined a good portion of my childhood because he ruined for me my trust in all men. For years, I couldn't look at men. I couldn't be in the same room with a guy if it was just me and him. It didn't matter the age. It didn't matter the reason. I couldn't do it. I was forced into it coming into high school because majority of my teachers were men. And it just, over time, I slowly got used to having men in my life again. I realized that just because he did something wrong doesn't mean all men are the same way, which I really needed to learn. It's good to learn because regardless of a bad situation, that doesn't mean it happens to everybody. It doesn't mean everybody does it. Now in life, I'm currently married, have been for 3.5 years. We have a beautiful baby girl. She's going to be 1 at the end of the month. And I work with pretty much all men. I don't really have many girls that are friends anymore, which is kind of ironic considering my history. But I finally learned to grow. Even though he ruined a portion of my childhood, I learned that you can't let the past drag you down. You have to be able to move forward in life, otherwise you're not going to progress. You're not going to join the military. You're not going to earn rank and promotions or awards and decks and all that kind of stuff, or whatever your path may be. If I could teach anybody that, it would make my day. If you ever meet somebody who has gone through a hardship in life, especially a sexual assault, because it can be extremely traumatizing, just be there for that person. It's big. But that's basically my story. Thank you.
Tech Sergeant Jeremy Liebenguth. I have been stationed here 20 for life here at Barksdale Air Force Base. Thank you. I've been married to my wife now for 18 years. I have a 16-year-old daughter who thinks she's 20. I got a 15-year-old son who thinks he's 18. I got a 10-year-old daughter, still my princess. We invented civil rivalry, I think. I'm out here today to talk to you all about my son and how I had to deal with his terminal illness and how it's affected my career over the years. And with that being said, I did arrive here in February '98 to be a crew chief. I'm a military brat, so I demanded to be a crew chief. I don't know what I was thinking, but that's what I went for. I worked my way up. I started out on Aircraft Boss 28, did assistant crew chief, worked my way up to flying crew chief, TDY, deployed for Enduring Freedom, Iraqi Freedom, warheads on foreheads. But afterwards, Manning started going down really low. We went from 180 crew chiefs in our shop to 60. Workload wasn't changing. Hours, deployment, exercises were adding up. We started number chasing just for survival purposes more than anything. And to say we could still do it. Around this time, 2007, as the work was getting more strenuous, found out my son was, we had moved from the east side, the old housing area. The mold was basically the walls. So moved us to the main base, and they had stairs. And we noticed our son was having problems going upstairs. He was using 2 hands to go up the rails. He couldn't barely get up the bus. We knew muscular dystrophy, terminal illness, basically affects the muscles, and basically your muscles turn to fat tissue and they go away. We knew this ran in my wife's family, and we wanted to get him tested. So we took a med group, get some blood work done. I remember getting a phone call from Captain Thacker at the time. He was a captain, and said for me and my wife to come in, not to bring our son. Me and my wife, I remember driving in the car, and my wife and I didn't talk to each other. It was one of those moments where you were scared to say anything. You were worried how she was going to react, and I was worried how I was going to react. And we parked in the med group parking lot, and before we got out of the car, I was like, we're gonna do this together. Whatever happens, we're gonna do it together. And it was the only thing I had to say. And we didn't say I love you or whatever. We just walked in holding hands, and he sat us down, and he says he'd be back in a second. So we sat there and worried some more, and then he came back in. He just wanted to get extra confirmation before he told us. And going by lab results, he said that he did have muscular dystrophy. And I can tell you, it's probably the worst day of my life. You know, when when she grabbed my hand and she clenched just like she was giving birth to him all over again. And the swailing that my wife was doing was pretty heartbreaking. It's not something that you ever want to see one of your loved ones, but one you've been married to for so long to go through. And at the same time, it was like the room was getting smaller. The air was getting sucked out, like someone punched you in the gut. When she grabbed my hand, I remember when he was born. And any father, I think, can tell you that you have these certain aspirations for your child. You plan on watching play football, playing sports, getting married, having kids of his own one day. And to be told that that's not going to happen is it's devastating. I was speechless. My wife is screaming and crying. I remember hearing med group, the med tech, asking, are you PRP, are you PRP? And we're about to deploy in 2 weeks. And all I could do was just nothing, you know. Eventually, I tell them PRP, and I go to the flight chiefs, and like, take a week off. Get your head straight and be ready to work. And all I could think was, well, thanks for the day off, and I'll try to figure this out, thanks. And so I did that. I went home, took a week off, came back. They're like, it's like, you know what, we need you, you're on flying status, we need you to go to Hawaii for a few weeks for an exercise/air show. It's a big deal. You're our go-to guy. And I was like, I can't do this. Just found out my son here a couple weeks ago. I need this time off. My wife's severely depressed, and they're like, no, you're going. I don't know how many of y'all know about crew chiefs and flying crew chief status, but for us, the bomber world, it's a volunteer type thing. It's not something we're paid to do. We do it for free. But we do it because we like the airplane and we love the job. Because it was volunteer and they were forcing me to do something, and I couldn't leave my wife for a few weeks, not after we just found out. Walked over and shredded my flying status paperwork, and I told the guy, now I'm definitely not going. Take that. And that's what would start the war between me and the flight chiefs. Their idea of helping me out was going to mids, working grave shift. I didn't know how to take that. I was working mids, that way I still do my appointments and still get work out of me. And at the time, he had about 30 appointments every month for different diagnosis, for different things he had to do for diagnosis. There's a lot of stuff that goes involved with stuff like that, a lot of medical appointments. And that was the answer. Something about crew chiefs. I don't know how much you all know about us crew chiefs, but we like to drink, we like to work hard, play hard. We don't talk about feelings like this right now. It's just kind of awkward for me, to be honest with you, because we usually talk to small groups, hang out with small groups. But we never talk about stuff like family. We took care of each other, made sure everybody got home safe. We made sure we were TDY, deployed, whatever. We kept an eye on each other. But to actually talk to each other about what we're actually going through, it's not something, it seemed kind of weak, because what the job we do is hard, it's perfection. So you had to have that strong mentality. It wasn't awfully seen as someone you should just go and talk to someone about. And at the time, mental health wasn't one of those things either that people talked about. Like today, we're always talking about mental health and getting taken care of, seeing a chaplain. In those days, that was something that was a kind of relatively new concept. And so I didn't talk to it. We'd fight. I'd try for humanitarian orders. They get turned down. One day I finally, the guy said, I was like, look, I need some break, I need time off. And he's like, and the flight chief was like, oh, we got you working mids, that's where we need you. We can't take leave right now, you know we're short. And I was like, look, I probably shouldn't even be going to life. That time it was called life skills. And I was like, I need to go see life skills. It's like, well, maybe we need to discharge you too. So I was like, grumbled and fought over it, then we walked away. And finally got to a UDM position away from the flight line after fighting for it. So I never really got to deal with it. I helped my wife out. I was a strong one in the family. My dad was an old school officer at the time, and that didn't help either. So all I had was a strong one, and at least I thought I was, because I was still going drinking. That's how I dealt with it. Undeployed, went TDY, and I drink. That's how us maintainers do it. Come back, never got drunk from my family, so I'd start eating. I go back and forth with PT program, PT test. Luckily, this last couple rotations ago, I had a senior who actually started putting in my head and just saying some small things about, hey, I'm here, if you need to talk, stuff like that. Of course, 15 years being a crew chief, it's hard to change you overnight. My last deployment rotation I was on to Guam was what broke my back. Finally, I had to admit I had a problem, because we deployed at a certain time to Guam to where it was 6 months long, and we missed every single holiday of the year except for Easter. And it was one holiday after another, and all you think about is you see all these people with their families. Guam can be a nice deployment. This was my 6th trip, so it didn't really help matters, because I've pretty much seen and done everything you do in Guam. 2 weeks, never mind 6 trips or 6 months, 4 months deployments. But seeing those families with their kids, and then I'm just thinking, like, I've already missed this time with my son, and I only have a limited time with him. And I missed him walk, I missed him talk, say his first words, because of Operation Enduring Freedom, Iraqi freedom, which was worth it. It was worth the sacrifice. But knowing that I got limited time with him, and I've already missed these steps, and now I'm missing all these holidays with my son that I only have a limited time with anyway, it started hitting me really hard. And I was getting these phone calls from my wife. He's getting weaker. He's using his power wheelchair more. He's not walking as much. He's falling all the time. You can barely touch him. He falls over. And again, that senior was there. Like, you need to talk. And I started listening to him some. But when I came back, failed on a PT test. I lost my position. I was in production, and that's the job that I've worked my whole entire career for. Flight line expediter, where you run the flight line, you coordinate all the shifts, all the shift work, you make it happen. I'll take that back. I helped the guys make it happen. They were the ones to make it happen. I coordinated it for them. But it was a prestigious job for being a crew chief. You work your whole career for that job, and I told I was no longer promotable, that I needed to go to be do a section chief job. And it was the hardest thing for me to deal with. And on top of that, you have my son asking me, Dad, does this mean I want to go get my new power wheelchair? And it's nothing like rushing the med group and trying to get last minute details in, because if I didn't pass my next one, I could be looking at a discharge. And I remember my son and I coming from one of his appointments a few years ago. He was 8 years old at the time, and he had been having the runs and diarrhea for a year because he was learning how to deal with his terminal illness. Because I had a choice at one time to say, when he asked me the question at 7.5 years old, Dad, is this going to kill me? To hear that coming out of a 7-year-old's mouth, you should never hear. I don't wish that on anybody. And I had a choice between lying to him or telling him the truth. Being in the military and the core values, I didn't lie to him. I was, son, you got to have hope. I have to have hope for you, and you're going to have hope with me too. We're going to make it through this. And it was tough, and he took it, and it's been out a year. Then one day we were going down this appointment like I was just telling you about, And I don't know how familiar you are with St. John Berkman's, but Shumpert's parking lot overlooks their soccer field. And he saw the kids playing, and one day he just said, "Dad," looking out over that field, he goes, "I'm gonna be one of those kids. I'm gonna be that one kicking the ball. I'm gonna be that one." And I was like, "All right, son." And I think back to that question he was asking me, is this it? And I realized that my son was fighting this entire time, and I had given up. And I lost faith in myself and in life. We had been going to church and thought that we were okay, and really we weren't. We were not okay. And told my boss, I'm going to mental health, I need to get myself fixed, and I need to start passing my PT test. You get faced with a situation like that, you're going to do whatever you have to do to pass the PT test. But in this case, it was more so, because I wasn't just doing it for me, I was doing it for my son. And mental health helped me show positive coping skills for that. Instead of eating, or drinking your life away, there's other options out there. My son follows me when I'm running, he follows me in his power wheelchair. He's right there with me. And I can tell you that when you have a 300-pound wheelchair, chasing your butt, you're going to stay ahead of that power wheelchair. I'm just saying. He's something else. And you know, he has this little LED screen. It tells him how fast he's going. It's like, "Dad, you're only going 2.6 miles an hour. You need to speed it up, Dad." So, exaggerating a little bit, but we're doing 6. He's always there. He's very analytical. He's very smart. He's very intelligent. If you saw him, he used to make straight A's. His idol is Stephen Hawkins. And he has a very preachy, sarcastic mouth. But he's been an inspiration for me. And I wish people would see him as inspiration instead of feeling sorry for him. One of the things that made it difficult was people didn't know how to talk to me and my wife anymore. We lost friendships. I lost all those coping skills. They opened our career field up to heavies. All the guys I worked with for years left because of the Q-code status for me. I was stuck here. And mental health showed me that there was different coping skills. There's a different way to talk to people. And there's different people who I can talk to that I feel comfortable with. And I encourage people to seek out those, you know, the chaplain or a pastor, if they're not familiar with that. I'm Catholic, so now I make sure I talk to priests when I need to talk to them. I talk to coworkers more openly about my situation to hopefully, if they're facing something like that, then they know where they can go. And they know that my door is always open to talk to them. And I think that's important in today's Air Force. With the manning the way it is now, you have to talk. You have to talk to your troops. We're a limited resource already, and the experience we have now, we need to preserve and make sure these guys are taken care of. It wasn't there for me. I became a number, and we have to realize as we grow smaller that we can't be focusing on just numbers and what needs to be done. We need to focus on how it's getting done and who's doing it. Other than that, that's my story. Thank you.